This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website or domain, check out squarespace.com. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video. Two of the most common topics you hear discussed in photography are 1, photo sharpness, and 2, the megapixels of cameras, that is, sensor resolution. But often the distinction of the two is lost because while not the same thing, there is an interrelationship between them. This is often summed up by the question often asked, do I put an expensive sharp lens on a low resolution camera or a less sharp lens on a higher megapixel camera? Which one would win? In this video, I'm going to explain how sharpness and resolution are related, how they're different, and how to use your understanding of both of these to take better photos and make better gear choices. Stay till the end to find out why understanding these two issues solves the mystery of whether or not you should use a teleconverter. My name is Simon D'Entremont and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more.
Try to open up your mind sometimes. You'll be just fine.
Now let's start off with a bit of a disclaimer. This is going to be hard to show you on your devices graphically as I'm limited by the quality of the device you're watching on. It's the same as if I was trying to show you the difference in sound quality of speakers that cost $100, $1,000, and $10,000 when the sound of each of them is coming out of the same speaker on your device. But I'll do what I can. Let's start off by understanding the fundamentals of what we're discussing here. First, resolution. Now, what is it? Now, resolution can be used to describe the ability to see detail, like in resolving power. But in the case of digital photography, primarily we're using it to describe the pixel dimensions of an image. This is often described as A times B, meaning height by the width, like 4,000 by 6,000 pixels. When you multiply these, you get 24 million, or 24 megapixels. So 4,000 by 6,000 could be the pixel dimensions of your 24 megapixel camera. So let's look at an example. Here's a photo of a blue jay. I took and cropped the original size down to 2627 pixels by 2627 pixels, basically a square. Now what happens when I change the pixel dimensions from the original down to 1000 by 1000, 500 by 500, 100 by 100, and 10 by 10? If you keep the same size of how a pixel is shown on your device, the image is getting smaller due to the smaller dimensions. But here's a first observation. When looking at it in its new size, it's hard to tell the image quality has been impacted. But in real life, we look at images the same size regardless of resolution. We fill the screen. And what do we see at full screen? We see that the lower resolution, the less quality we perceive in the image. That's because pixels have to be averaged out to 1 pixel to represent what used to be made up of hundreds or thousands of pixels. The lesson learned here? Higher resolutions allow for more detail to be represented in an image, improving image quality. But also, viewing distance and size matter. That's why a street billboard can be 2 megapixels and still look great. You look at it from so far away that lots of resolution isn't needed. And that's why watching a movie from the 80s like Back to the Future at 720 pixels on the long edge look great on DVD played on your small bedroom TV. But on a modern 60-inch TV, doesn't look that great. But now we just unearthed another issue about resolution. It's that capture resolution and display resolution are not the same. You can capture a great resolution, but to show it off, you need to display it in a high enough resolution to do so. So you're at the mercy of the screen that the viewer is using. If it's small and high resolution, like a modern phone, your images will look better. Larger and lower resolution, like an older big screen TV, they will look worse. Now let's look at sharpness. Sharpness is often interpreted as to how much detail can be resolved or distinguished between two features. Unlike resolution, sharpness is much less scientific and more subjective. We perceive photos as sharp usually, rather than measure it. Now there do exist measurement methods for sharpness like spatial resolution and camera MTF charts published by lens manufacturers. But for most of the photography world, we say that a photo looks sharp. That is, we perceive a photo as sharp. There are many things that can impact the delivery of our perception of sharpness. One is having lenses of high optical quality. These have a high resolving power, are free of optical aberrations, and produce nice contrast. This leads to another important observation. Sharpness is a feature of lenses, not cameras. I get asked all the time, does this camera take sharp photos? This question should be asked of lenses, not camera bodies. Cameras with high megapixel sensors deliver resolution. Lenses deliver sharpness. There are some exceptions to this, such as overly strong anti-aliasing filters on camera sensors that can make images less sharp looking, and helpful features like sensor stabilization. But this will be accurate for most situations. Another attribute that improves the perception of sharpness is micro-contrast, called acutance. That is, being able to see small areas of bright and dark next to each other and differentiate between them. Like on these feathers of this bird photo of mine. Why is it so visible in this image? One is indeed a sharp lens, as we discussed just now, but another is good directional light. It provides for these little ridges of light and dark. So good light can even add to perceived sharpness. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. If you haven't heard of them, they're an all-in-one website platform that helps you create your website from scratch. You don't need any coding experience or even to be tech savvy. They have lots of templates to choose from to make it easy to get your own website up and running in no time. But even though they have great templates, like ones for photography for example, the place to go now is to use their new design intelligence feature using both Squarespace's experience and cutting-edge AI, helping you to tailor your own website to your own specific needs. It can even help you write text to describe your business or products to your consumers. It looks really professional to have online galleries in your own domain, and a website is also a great way to monetize your work by setting up an online store using Squarespace payments, which you can set up with just a few clicks. You can even do buy now and pay later with options like Afterpay. Go to squarespace.com to sign up for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Simon for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, what do we learn when we put these two issues up against each other? First, what happens when we have both sharpness and resolution together? This is the ideal scenario. When you capture a sharp image, can export it from processing in the same high resolution, and view it on a high resolution device, you have a great result. The best of both worlds. But what if you can only have one? So what happens if you have a sharp photo, but a lower resolution? If you look at these photos of a willet, one captured at 20 megapixels, the other at 45 megapixels, shot with my Canon 500mm f4, one of the sharpest lenses in the world. If we zoom up close, we can see that the 45 megapixel image indeed looks sharper. But at a normal viewing distance, they really look the same on my laptop with a screen resolution of 2560 by 1440. I have to get down from the original 20 megapixels on this image all the way down to almost 2 megapixels or less to see the difference on this screen. What about on a big 50-inch 4K TV? Even up close, the 20 megapixel and 5 megapixel image weren't distinguishable, but the 1 megapixel image was easily discernible. Now, what does this tell us? It's that extra resolution isn't really perceptible beyond a certain point, and that differences in resolution, as long as they're beyond a critical point, aren't as crucial. What's that critical point? It will depend on the resolution of your viewing device and the viewing distance of the viewer. For many practical applications, that's maybe 8 megapixels. That's enough for most applications. Now, of course, there are exceptions galore. I shoot wildlife and often crop my images. I can crop deeper and still keep 8 megapixels on my photo with a higher megapixel camera. So now we've talked about a sharp photo with a lower resolution. What about a photo that's not sharp, but a higher resolution? This photo here isn't very sharp, as there was haze in the air when I took it. The fact that it was shot on a relatively high megapixel camera at 45 megapixels isn't going to save it. So high resolution is a conduit for sharpness, not the creator of it. You need it to fairly represent sharpness, but it can't save you if the original didn't have it. So resolution matters more when you have sharpness at the capture stage. Now this leads to another important observation. Can you fix these issues of sharpness and resolution after the fact? When it comes to sharpness, you can indeed add sharpness in processing up to a point. Sharpness is enhanced with edge contrast or acutance, even with no resolution increase, and is influenced by resolution at capture, which can't be changed. When you add sharpening in post-processing, like Photoshop, look at what happens. If I take this soft edge between gray and white and zoom into 1600% and add sharpening in processing, look at what happens. It adds a dark edge to the gray side. If I add clarity, it adds even more. So images that aren't tack sharp can be sharpened by increasing the acutance or clarity of edges and details in the photo. But you can only do so much. Processing improves sharpness, not creates it. Now, resolution is another matter. Resolution is only a value if you have the sharpness behind it, and a high resolution does not guarantee high ability to reveal detail. I can actually resize this image to 200 megapixels. No matter. Resolution doesn't deliver sharpness if it wasn't there to start with. It just gets bigger and blurrier. Now, we can cheat this with upscaling software like Topaz Gigapixel. This software can enlarge the pixel dimensions and add data to fill in the missing pieces. Not with something as bad as this, but I can upscale this 5 megapixel image back to 20 megapixels and it would look pretty good. But it turns out that while you can't just upscale the resolution of a photo to make it look sharper, the opposite is a different situation. A large resolution photo can be scaled down to a smaller one of higher quality, as the original detail can be preserved in lower resolution versions as long as they're not too small in dimensions. So what have we learned here and how does it apply to your photography? First, don't bother getting high resolution cameras if your lenses aren't very sharp. You may get ever so slight benefits of more megapixels, but most of the benefit will be lost if your lenses aren't sharp enough. A more pixel-rich, high-definition photo of a blurry scene isn't worth much. 2, megapixels aren't everything. A sharp lens will provide more benefit, on average, than a high megapixel camera if you can only have one. And super high megapixel cameras provide marginal benefits to the average photographer, with the exceptions being people who crop a lot or photographers whose work will be viewed up super close, like maybe an art gallery. This is another reason to spend a larger part of your photography budget on lenses. 3, both sharpness and resolution can be undermined by the display resolution of your viewer. If they look very close or enlarge very big, your image quality will be impacted. On the other hand, small devices like phones and tablets make this problem less. So on Instagram, for example, with a small thumbnail, you can get away with more and hide imperfections. So these discussions are more critical for printing big prints than posting on social media. 4, resolution is an enabler of sharpness, not a creator of it. A higher resolution capture, workflow, and final viewing dimensions will help preserve sharpness at the capture stage, but not create it. Again, favoring getting sharp lenses to take detail photos in the first place. By the way, sign up on my email list and get access to my free guide on shooting in backlit situations, and follow me on social media for free tips with every post. Links below. So back to my original question, a sharp lens on a low megapixel camera or a less sharp lens on a high resolution camera? I'd take the sharp lens option. It will yield great results, some if not most of the time. So here's a relatively inexpensive kit lens on a high megapixel camera compared to a premium lens on a low megapixel camera. Who's the winner? The premium lens setup, even on a camera with half the megapixels. Now I promised you a bonus tip, and it's that in this video is the answer to the question, should I use a teleconverter? Even if you didn't know the answer was there. The answer lies in the following. If you need more reach, which will provide the sharpest photo with the highest resolution? Cropping more deeply or adding a teleconverter to magnify the image? Let's look at sharpness first. The answer here is that only the sharpest lenses can be magnified by 40%, a 1.4 teleconverter, and still be very sharp. If you put a teleconverter on a lens that isn't sharp, all you do is magnify a blurry image. Like enlarging this image that isn't already sharp. There's no benefit at all. But enlarging this photo taken on my 500mm f4 will yield more benefit. As such, only the most premium lenses pass this test. Fast primes like a 300 or 400 f2.8, 500 and 600mm f4s, and really premium sharp zoom lenses. Now let's look at resolution. When you crop a photo, you reduce its pixel dimensions. If you crop a 20 megapixel image to that of a 1.4 teleconverter, you get about half the megapixels left. But if you use a teleconverter, you enlarge the photo optically, then capture the newly enlarged image using the full resolution of the sensor, the whole 20 megapixels. This means that the teleconverter yields better resolution than cropping. So at this point, it's all up to the battle for sharpness. If, and only if, your lens has enough sharpness that you can magnify it and still be acceptably sharp, a teleconverter will yield better results than cropping for resolving power. Now the reality is that you also lose a stop of light with the 1.4 teleconverter, for example, have a slower autofocus and a smaller field of view. So you need to consider these too. If this video is deserving, give it a like. And if the whole teleconverter discussion interests you, I have a whole video on that, which you can see here. And I hope you can use this information to go out soon and get your own unique and amazing photos. I know you can do it.